Chapter 1. Zarinca. The tent had gathered at the edge of the forest, where the soil was poor and the cold wind of late autumn blew. Old carts, covered with hemp tarpaulins, formed a wide circle, and in the middle a fire burned that crackled lazily. Barefoot children ran between the tents, while the women, in their long, colorful skirts, prepared polenta in black pots of smoke. The men sat together, on wooden logs, playing cards or mending cartwheels. Here lived Zarinca, a 17-year-old girl, with eyes as black as pitch, and long hair braided in two thick tails. She had the gift of song from her mother Savita. Whenever Zarinca's voice rose over the plain, people would stop their work and listen. Her melodies had something wild, something that stirred your blood and made your soul tremble. Zarinca's mother had also been famous in her youth. Savita knew how to read. She could write her name and a few words in Romanian, a rare thing in a country where few could even say their age. She had also sung in the villages of the plain at weddings and dances, but she had never had the courage to go far. "The world is bad with us, Zarinco," she would tell her, often, looking at her daughter with heavy eyes. "Here we are among our own, as poor as we are." But Zarinca wanted more. She felt her calling in her blood. She dreamed of big cities, of squares full of people, of lights that do not go out with the sun. She dreamed of singing on real stages, of wearing velvet dresses and of no longer sleeping under moth-eaten blankets. On a cold night, under a moonless sky, Zarinca made up her mind. She tied a few things in an old scarf, a pair of better slippers, a clean skirt and a silver coin that she had kept hidden for months. She was going to run away to Bucharest, the city about which she had heard fantastic stories from the merchants who used to pass by the stall. But she was not alone in her thoughts. Next to the fire on a sheepskin lay her younger sister Laminta, a 10-year-old girl, with eyes just as black and burning. Laminta had followed her that evening, had seen her preparing her bundle, and when everyone else had fallen asleep, she crept up next to her. "Do you want to go?" whispered the child, her voice trembling. Zarinca stopped tying. "Don't tell anyone, Laminta, that I swear." "I swear," the girl said with childish fear. "But, take me too." Zarinca looked at her tenderly and hugged her. "I can't, my child, it's a hard and dangerous road. What if our people or who knows what bad people catch me? You stay with your mother." The light was crying in small, muffled sobs. Zarinca stroked her hair until she fell asleep and then, with a heavy heart, she slipped away into the night. Her escape was like a breathless chase. She passed through the forest, avoiding the paths, listening to every rustle. From time to time, she stopped and listened. No screams, no footsteps of a pursuer. Only the wind whistling through the branches. The road to Bucharest was long. She walked for days, sometimes asking for a plate of food at scattered houses or seeking shelter in abandoned barns. On the way, she met all kinds of people, a cart with peasants going to the market, an old woman who gave her a loaf of bread, a lost soldier who asked her, smiling, if she didn't want to return home. But Zarinca clenched her fists and walked ahead. She dreamed of Bucharest. And in a twilight, when she was already walking on a wider road, bordered by thick dust and gravel, she caught sight of the city. It was the end of the 18th century. Bucharest unfolded before her like a dream. Large houses with porches, bustling inns, squares full of merchants and taverns from which the smell of wine and roast meat could be heard. Horse-drawn carts passed by at a gallop, and women in loose dresses and parasols laughed under decorated hats, gentlemen with top hats, and walking sticks walked leisurely, and beggars and sweepers mingled in the side streets. Zarinca had never seen so many people before. She felt small, weak, dusty, with a poor skirt and beaten-up shoes. But a proud heart beat in her chest. She stopped in a large square, where fiddlers were playing near the tables of a hahn. There, for the first time, Zarinca understood what she was going to do. She was going to sing. She was going to sing until people turned their eyes to her, until all of Bucharest knew her. She approached with timid steps, listening to the violins and the cymbals. With a sudden impulse, she raised her voice. An old song, of sorrow and longing, rose from her chest and floated over the crowd. Silence. Then, slowly, people began to gather. They looked in amazement at the poor girl who was singing with such a strong fire, with a voice that seemed to come from the depths of the earth. An old fiddler, with long mustaches and shabby clothes, approached and beckoned to her. "Who are you, girl?" "Zarinca," she said, her heart in her throat. You sing as if you were crying with every limb, the old man laughed. Oh, you want to sing with us? At the inn near the royal court? Zarinca's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. That night, Zarinca slept for the first time in an inn room, on a soft mattress, with a real blanket. She dreamed of Laminta and Mother Savita, but especially she dreamed of the future that stretched out, endless and promising, in front of her. Because Zarinca, the tent girl, had set out to conquer the world. Chapter 2. The Inn at the Royal Court. Bucharest at the end of the 18th century was a lively city, full of contrasts. On the side streets, mud mixed with straw and dung, and carts creaked under the weight of goods brought from the countryside. And the slums around the royal court, small adobe houses were piled one on top of the other, separated only by shabby fences. Women washed clothes in the Dambovita riverbed, and merchants called out goods at their stalls since dawn. And the center, however, around the court, the world was more colorful and abundant. Here, large inns stood, with heavy oak gates, where travelers from all over the country stopped, landowner with shiny boots, Greek and Turkish merchants, young gentlemen in search of adventures. The streets were narrow, winding, but full of life. The smell of baked bread, the aromas of oriental spices, the thick steam of soups and mutton roasts. The inn where Zarinca had found shelter and voice was called La Stoa Denarii, but it was an old place, with white, vaulted walls, and a wooden porch, surrounding the wide courtyard, full of barrels and carts. Inside, the massive oak tables were always full, peasants in loose shirts, merchants with wide turbans and colorful dolmens, soldiers with decorated caps. Every evening began the same way. In a corner of the inn, the fiddlers sat on a podium, covered with mats. Zarinca was playing there now, alongside the 5 fiddlers who had welcomed her among them like a younger sister, although for some, their thoughts were more confused than that. The first. There was old man Kostake, the old man with milk-white mustaches, his violin creaking with emotion in the songs of mourning and vibrating with joy in the fiery choruses. He had been the first to call Zarinca to sing with them. Then there was Ali Dulcimer, a plump man, always with his shirt open on his chest and a thick laugh. He held the cymbal as an extension of his soul, beating rhythms that filled the inn with life. Dinu, the most sober of them, played the kobza. He was silent and sullen, with deep-set eyes under bushy eyebrows, but when his fingers touched the strings, a story was born without words. Pandili, the summery and agile boy, played the drum and the derelt. He was never serious. He made pranks and jokes, but he knew how to keep up the rhythm even when everyone was drunk. The last, and perhaps the most dangerous for Zarinca, was Matei, a young man of about 20, with black hair and brown eyes, shining with cunning and passion. He played the violin like a fallen angel. When he began to draw his bow over the strings, the women put aside their wine jugs, and the men frowned enviously. Soon as he had seen Zarinca, Matei had his eyes on her. He often smiled at her over the violin strings. He had slipped a dried flower into her neck scarf one evening, and sometimes he whispered sweet words to her, while the inn was buzzing with voices. Zarinca was afraid and happy for him at the same time. She knew well the power a man's gaze had over a girl alone in the world. But at the same time, her heart played in her chest like Matei's violin when she saw him approaching. Every evening, after the inn was closed, filled, Zarinca would get up and sing. Sometimes songs of longing, which brought tears to the eyes of the boyars and made the peasants sigh heavily. Sometimes songs of joy with fire and twang, which raised the world to the game. People would start clapping, the tables would empty and the glasses would clash, and every time, Matei would fix his bow and eyes on her, making her blush and sing even more brightly. At the Danube Star had gradually become Zarinca's home. The mistress of the inn, a fat and wise woman named Tonta, had fallen in love with her and taken her under her wing, protecting her from the evils of the city. Zarinca slept in a small room on the first floor, with a crooked window that looked out onto the courtyard. In the evening, she would fall asleep to the sound of cartwheels and the songs of the slops that dripped from the inn tables. But Bucharest was a dangerous city for a lonely girl, even with a voice like hers. Soulless people lurked in the back streets, and the city's sparkling promises often hid traps. One evening, after he finished singing, Matei came closer than usual to lean towards her, with that sly smile. "What do you say, pussy? You don't belong here among stupid and drunk people. With me, we would go to boyar courts, you would sing in front of gentlemen. You would wear silk dresses." His words were sweet, like honey on the tongue, but a shadow of fear flickered in Zarinca's eyes. She too dreamed of silk dresses, of boyar courts. But she knew that every dream had a price. He smiled at her slightly and pulled back. "It's not time yet, Mattei," she whispered. The young man laughed briefly and tipped his hat. "As you wish, pussy. But I'll wait for you." Zarinca remained looking after him, while Mattei disappeared among the noisy tables. In her heart, a question was struggling. Will this city bring her dreams to fruition? Or will it swallow her, like so many others, in its mud and whirlpool? At night, looking out the crooked window of her little room, Zarinca clenched her fists, the scarf in which she kept the dried flour from Mattei, and whispered, "I did not run away from the tent to be sold to another master. I will sing. And I will be free." Chapter 3. The Song and the Traps. Zarinca's days at the Danube Star Inn had become increasingly hectic. The news of the girl with the golden voice had reached far and wide, especially in the homes of the wealthy. Boyars in expensive clothes and ladies with velvet fans sometimes came down to the inn, just to listen to her. They smiled at her, left heavy gold coins on the wine glass, and looked at her as if she were a treasure to be conquered. At first, Zarinca did not know what to do with the attention of men. She was ashamed, blushing at every long look or bold compliment. Raised among the poor tents of the camp, she knew what it meant to be looked at with lust. Her mother had taught her, with tears in her eyes, that a woman's freedom could be lost in a moment of weakness. "To guard your soul and body as your greatest treasure," she told her. The old woman had said one night, by the crackling fire, and Zarinca listened. Until then, no man had even touched her skin with the tip of a finger. Soon, however, greater temptations began to come. Some were elderly boyars, dressed in heavy robes, with round bellies and heavy rings on their fingers. They beckoned to her from the threshold of the inn, called her to their tables, and promised her silk dresses, gold chains, even a little house on the outskirts of the city. But when Zarinca met their blurry eyes and flabby cheeks, her heart clenched with disgust. Others, younger, with burning eyes and ruddy cheeks, looked at her with a poor lust. Handsome young men, with clean shirts and the looks of hungry dogs. They promised eternal love, songs under the windows, and stolen kisses. But they had neither land nor money. Only dream promises. Among these courtiers appeared the boyar Stanciu, a man of about 50 years old, with a black mustache and palms as wide as shovels. He was the one who first offered her the chance to sing in large houses. One evening, after the applause died down and the noise of the inn began to disperse, Stanciu approached her and said, "My girl, it's a shame for your voice to die out here, among drunks and trash. People of quality come to my court. You will sing in fragrant rooms, not in smoke-filled halls." Zarinca felt her heart racing to sing in boyar houses. It was the dream that had made her run away from the tent. But he also knew that nothing is free. He looked at the boyar for a long time, with the eyes of a scared child, but his voice remained determined. "If you want me for my voice, I will come. But my body is not for sale." The boyar laughed thickly, with a trace of astonishment. "That's it for now, singing fairy. We'll see later. The world is big and times are hard." That's how Zarinca began to sing in large salons, under crystal chandeliers, among ladies in silk dresses and gentlemen in tailcoats. When she opened her voice, silence fell around. Even the most arrogant boyars forgot about boredom, and the ladies broke their fans, jealously watching their men startle at every note. But behind the lights, other dangers lurked. One night, after a long feast in the house of an old back, Stanciu discreetly pulled her aside. "It's time for you to be rewarded as you should, singing fairy." And he handed her a small velvet box, in it, a thin gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant. "A sign that you are mine," he whispered. Zarinca felt the blood rising to her cheeks. She did not touch him. She raised her eyes to the boyar and, with a dignity rarely seen in a poor girl, said, "Neither my singing nor my freedom can be bought." She turned her back and left, leaving behind a whole world of shocked looks and indignant murmurs. But her refusal did not go unpunished. In the days that followed, she felt the doors closing. Some boyars who had received her with open arms now turned their backs on her. The ladies looked at her coldly, and the dice and whispers about the naughty gypsy went from mouth to mouth. Back at the inn, life was also becoming harder. The rich client sent word to stop Zarinca from singing, and Tonta, the mistress,